Hello everyone. So we are getting this meeting at order at 11:44, and for the opening remarks and introduction, ratification of the meeting chair. Can I have a mover? Move. So, be. Yeah.
So, one moment. There we go. So the motion the members are being asked to approve is a motion to ratify Hassan Marali as today's meeting chair. Hassan is not a current student, although they are an alumni, and they are also a staff member over at our provincial partner, the Alliance of BC Students. He'll be providing neutral and impartial chairing services as a non-student.
Yeah. So, be resolved that the members ratify Hassan Marali as a meeting chair, and those who are in favor and opposition, can you raise up? I will take this. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and all those opposed, I'll take that as a yes. Yeah, you got it.
Hello, everyone. Testing 1, 2. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us here today for the 2024 Annual General Meeting of the Capilano Students Union. I'd like to start by acknowledging that we are on the unceded, stolen, and occupied lands of the Squamish, the Tsleil-Waututh, and the Musqueam First Nations, and that the Capilano Students Union also operates on the Sunshine Coast in Sechelt, up in Squamish. My name is Hassan Marali. I'm an alumni of Capilano University. I'll be your meeting chair today. I just want to go over a brief explanation of the meeting rules, as it's very important to understand how we're going to be running the meeting for us to be able to take part in the meeting. So we're going to be using Robert's Rules of Order. Basically, Robert's Rules of Order is a type of parliamentary procedure. It's a set of rules that people use to run meetings to make sure meetings are run fairly and efficiently. Central to Robert's Rules of Order, understanding what a motion is. A motion is a formal proposal of action. So if you want the Capilano Students Union as an organization to take an action, for example, like making a formal statement on an issue or amending its bylaws, you would move a motion. You would say, I move to, or I move that the Capilano Students Union do X, Y, Z. The way that you get to speak is by the chair recognizing you. This isn't just to give one person all the power. It's to make sure that everyone gets to speak and everyone is given the chance to make their voice heard. We do have a mic that we're going to put, I believe, over there so that you have the ability to line up behind it. If you'd like to speak, please line up behind the mic. If you have trouble lining up behind the mic, please raise your hand and go like this, and I will put you on the speakers list and make sure that the mic comes to you and you get a chance to speak. So the way that you're able to speak, again, is by myself calling on you. You're not allowed to interrupt anyone speaking unless there are only on very rare circumstances, like you think like someone has broken the rules, or you need some information on the meeting procedures or on the reports that's being discussed, or if something is affecting your ability to take part in the meeting. So if you think somebody has breached the rules, you would raise your hand and say point of order. If you need some more information on the item being discussed to make a better voting decision, you can raise your hand and say point of inquiry. If you need information about the rules, you can raise your hand and say request for information. Or if something is affecting your ability to take part in the meeting, you can raise your hand and say point of personal privilege. I'd like to make sure that the meeting is run with respect. So if people are having very loud side conversations that are making it hard for for the speaker to be heard, I will stop the meeting and ask that you please lower your volume and not talk. We've all had a chance to review the agenda, I assume. If you have please, first of all, raise your voting card if you've got a voting card. Does everyone have a voting card? Perfect. Okay, so that's how you're gonna vote. So if you're voting in favor of a motion, make sure the green check mark is facing us. If you're voting against, there's a red X on the back, right? Perfect. And hang on to those voting cards because you have a number on them that'll be used in the draw later. And if you're moving or seconding a motion, please state your name so that we can get it for the minutes. All right, we're going to move on with the agenda now.
One more quick note from me. If you don't remember any of that as we're going, we want to make this meeting accessible. You can also just ask us during the discussion how to do something or how you can fully participate, and we'll assist as the meeting goes.
Yes. You can ask myself or Chris for Robert's Rules advice. Now let's get on with the rest of the agenda. The next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Is there a mover for the suggested motion to approve the agenda? Moved, Div, seconded, that person in the back right there. Abhijit, thank you very much. Is there anybody who would like to speak to this motion? Seeing no discussion, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your voting cards. All those opposed? Motion carried. The agenda is adopted. On to presentation of the audited financial statements. The suggested motion on the agenda is be it resolved that the members approve the audited financial statements for the fiscal year ended May 31st, 2024. Is there a mover for this motion? Moved in the front here, seconded in the back. Would anybody like to speak to this motion? Please go ahead.
Hello?
Go ahead. You're good, Tom.
Hi. Okay. Hi, my name is Saulo Ferreira. I'm the CSU's financial controller. I'm here today to give you a brief presentation of the 2023-2024 financial statements. So I assume all of you have a copy of the financial statements with you. So I'm going to start with, I'm going to start by page 1. If you see, I'm just going to highlight the most important sections. There's a lot of information here. You see at the top we have the opinion heading. So in the second paragraph, the auditors, they say that in their opinion, the accompanying financial statements present fairly in all materials in all material aspects the financial position of the society as at May 31st, 2024, and the results of its operation and its cash flows for the year then ended in accordance with Canadian accounting standards for non-profit organizations. What does that mean? The financial statements were approved. They issue an unqualified opinion, which means that they're happy with what they saw, they audited. We provided a lot of documents and information to them, and they were happy with that. So, moving on to page 3, the statement of financial position. Before I talk about the statement of financial position, I want to provide a brief explanation of what that is. The statement of financial position is a picture. It's a picture of how the CSU looks, how the CSU finances look at a given point in time. That date is the last date of the fiscal year, which is May 31st. So in this statement of financial position, we can see everything that the CSU has and owns as of that date. So we can see that the total accumulated current assets is a little bit above 10 million. And the reason for that is that the CSU in the last few years has been accumulating funds for the construction of the new student union building. You see that of the 10.6 million, about 10 million are in cash. And of that 10 million, 9 million is in a term deposit, which was accruing about 4.5% interest for that year. So the CSU is in a very strong financial position. We are heading very solidly towards the ability to build its building. The CSU doesn't have much liabilities. Most of the liabilities here that we see are deferred revenues, revenues that the CSU received in fiscal year 2024, but can only be recognized in fiscal year 2025. Liabilities regarding employees' vacation balances, which is also not a reason for concern, and has a significant accumulated balance. Total fund balance you see in the last line. This is how much the CSU has accumulated over the years. So a little bit over $10 million. Moving on to the next page, the statement of operations and changes in fund balances. What is that? Where's the statement of financial position is a picture of what the CSU has and what the CSU owns at a given date. This shows us the revenues and expenses that the CSU had for a given period. Revenues were extremely positive. Enrollment in the university has increased, so did the revenues for the CSU. Expenses were under control. We, in fiscal year 2024, when I say fiscal year 2024, I mean the fiscal year that ended in 2024. It started in 2023 and ended in May 31st, 2024. The CSU had a surplus which made up for the losses of the prior 2 years related to COVID. So there's no reason for concern. Very healthy surpluses in all the funds. One thing that is important here to mention for you to understand, you see many columns. Some of you might have taken accounting courses. You usually just see one column. These different columns refers to different funds that we have. One fund is the general fund, the operating fund. This is unrestricted. The CSU can use the funds in this fund for any type of expenses, whereas for the other funds, the expenses in these funds are restricted for a given purpose. And when you go to your Capilano University account, you see the different fees in your account that go to each of these funds. Moving on, the statement of cash flow is the last relevant of the three. Just shows us the movements in cash. So how much the CSU obtained in terms of how much in terms of cash inflows, how much in terms of cash outflows. If you want more explanations regarding the funds, page 6 has significant accounting policies, has a brief description of each of the funds. You will see the word unrestricted for the operating fund, which is what I just explained to you. The operating fund is unrestricted. The CSU can use these funds in any way it's approved by its leadership. And then you have the other funds right below. Then the next pages are, there are notes to the financial statements. For example, we have fixed assets, the computers that we have on this table, the tables that we have in our office, they show up in the fixed asset. So, and then we need to depreciate them over time. We have a note to that specific amount to explain over what period we depreciate the fixed assets, the tables, the computers, and furniture, and so on. So I'm not going to go into into very much detail because we would be spending too much time here on that. But all of that has been audited by our auditors. You see mentions to the cash balances, mentions notes to accounts receivable, prepaid. Why do we have a big prepayment? Many years ago, the CSU entered a leasing agreement with the university. So the CSU paid a large amount of prepaid rent for a given number of years. So that amount goes down every year because it's amortized. It's used as actual rent every year. Related party transactions, note number 8. Here we show how much was paid to each board member, not by their name, but by their position. And this is according to the BC Societies Act. And then we have schedules for each of the funds. And that's it. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions about the audited financial statements? Yes. Please stand up if you're able to. Can you use the microphone, please? Thanks.
Thank you. So I'm just curious, on the last page for the external meetings, it has nearly doubled from 2023. So I'm just curious what those meetings are. Thank you.
Sure. Some time ago, the Capilano Students Union Board of Directors voted to leave the Canadian Alliance of Student Associations. As a result of that, expenses that in past years would have been classified to conferences for student leaders to attend CASA conferences, and they run 4 of those a year. That funding was redeployed to the CSU organizing its own meetings with MPs and MLAs that are not part of that sort of national collective effort. And so that's why you'll see that jump.
Any other questions about the audited financial statements? Or comments? Going one more time, any more questions or comments about the audited financial statements? Yes.
What is in the external meeting? Like, on page 12?
Yeah.
Chris?
Yeah, so that was Nico's question. That's because we left the Canadian Alliance of Student Associations, it increased the expenses that actually pay for like student leaders to go to Victoria, for example, to lobby the provincial government, or to go to Ottawa to lobby the federal government, or local meetings where like paying for parking or inviting elected officials and facilitating a lunch or those kinds of things. So it's those miscellaneous meetings with external decision makers external to the university.
Yes, over here.
All the vice presidents.
Sorry, can you use the mic, please? Sorry, I know it's a pain, but
This is scary. Let's go up. Okay, I kind of had 2 questions.
Go for it.
Are all the vice presidents paid the same amount in theory?
I can take that one.
Yes, please.
Yes, in
Okay.
theory, but you might see some variances in the total because of timing on when somebody took office, where sometimes some position might be vacant for some time, so the amounts might not match. So the expectation is to see the same amount for the vice presidents, but they are usually not the same. So in theory, yes, but in practice, no.
And your second question? Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
Just a follow-up to that, I know there is one position that is a significant outlier from the others. One of last year's student executives had to pay withheld due to excessive non-attendance at board meetings, and so that was a policy decision by the board.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments about the audited financial statements? Seeing none, we'll go to a vote on the motion. All those in favor of approving the audited financial statements for the fiscal year ended May 31st, 2024, please raise your voting cards. All of those opposed, please raise your voting cards. Motion carried. The audited financial statements are approved. The next item on the agenda is the appointment of the auditor for the 2024-2025 fiscal year. So appointing the person or the firm who will do that work again for this next fiscal year. There's a suggested motion on the agenda. Be it resolved that the members approve the reappointment of Tompkins Wozni LLP as auditor for the 2024-2025 fiscal year. Is there a mover? Moved Sophia, seconded Divyansh. Any discussion? We'll hear from Chris first, and then we'll go to discussion.
Just a brief introduction. This is something that requires membership approval. The board can't appoint the auditor on their own. That's reserved for this group under the Societies Act. Tompkins has been our auditor since the 2015-16 financial statements that they were selected after a comprehensive request for proposals of auditing firms in the area. They have a specialization in nonprofit financial statements in particular, with specific experience with a number of university and college level student associations as well as provincial groups, so they understand our space well. They have rotated the principal auditor from Tompkins, who is assigned to us every couple of years, as is a best practice when you're keeping the same firm for a longer period of time, and the board has recommended the reappointment.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments on this motion? Any discussion? I'll ask one more time. Any discussion on this motion? Seeing and hearing none, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor of approving the reappointment of Tompkins Wozni LLP as auditor for the 2024-2025 fiscal year, please raise your voting cards. All of those opposed? Motion carried. Tompkins Wozni LLP is reappointed as auditor for the 2024-2025 fiscal year. Motions on the agenda. Item 5, consideration of special resolutions. There is a bylaw amendment related to executive reports. And the suggested motion on the agenda is, be it resolved as a special resolution that the bylaws be amended by adding a new bylaw, 14.6, to be read as follows. If a member of the executive committee fails to submit 3 or more written reports that are required by policy of the board, then the president must notify the member of the executive committee of the non-compliance. If within 30 days of this notice, a member of the executive committee has failed to submit the missing written reports for which the president has given notice, then that executive committee member may, having received at least 2 weeks' notice, be removed from office by a 2/3 resolution of the board. Is there a mover for this motion? Moved in front here, seconded in the middle there. Is there any discussion on this motion? And if there is, and I'll go to you in a moment, please. But if there's discussion, I feel like people might want to speak to this. So if there's more than one person who wants to speak, please line up to the right of the mic. If you're unable or something's impeding you from lining up, please raise your hand and do this, and I'll add you to the speakers list and make sure the mic comes to you. Chris?
A quick contextual note, this was a recommendation approved by the previous board of directors to come to membership at the annual general meeting. This followed a study by staff on practices at other student societies, and then a recommendation from the governance committee, and then an approval by the board of directors, and that's why this bylaw amendment is before you folks today. Only the membership can approve ways in which directors can be removed. The board can't approve new ways to remove themselves. That has to come to you folks as the electorate. So that's why this is up for approval today.
Thank you for the context. Any discussion on the motion? Laura?
Thank you. I just wanted to understand a little better if you can explain how often do they have to present these written reports? Why did they land on 3, and why would we wait a month just to submit? Why this amount of time? Why not sooner if we're having a negligent board
Chris?
member?
I don't think I can comment on the previous board's rationale for why they would have pitched these specific numbers. I think they likely just wanted to provide a reasonable period of time in which someone could address the non-compliance. In terms of the frequency of these reports, board policy right now requires from most board members semesterly reports. So once each semester, that doesn't affect the executives. The executives, specifically the 5 officers who are referenced in this motion, are each required to submit a report at the last board meeting of each calendar month. So it would be 12 reports during the year.
Okay, so then if they don't present 3 reports, then that would mean that for 3 months they didn't do their responsibility of submitting reports, plus 1 month of they're having a chance to present these written reports. So that would be like a term of having someone not presenting reports. I think yeah, I think it should be a lot late. Can I propose an amendment to this motion?
One moment, please. Sorry. Yes, you can propose an amendment. Would you like to, I feel like Chris wants to.
Sure.
Would you like to hear
Really,
that first?
really quickly, this was one part of a series of changes that were approved by the previous board. So a piece that is not pictured here is, yes, theoretically, it would have been 3 months of non-compliance by an executive. During that time, though, as the executives know from their red underlined emails warning them of this each month, if an executive doesn't submit a written report, we also just stop paying them until they do submit it. So 3 missing reports is probably unlikely, but it's not as though there are no consequences in the interim. Their pay would be withheld in its entirety until the reports are submitted.
Okay, yeah, that changes
And
things.
short answer, yes, you can propose amendments. I'm going to put an asterisk there. Amendments have to still be within the scope of the notice for special resolutions. So there are some amendments that we wouldn't be able to admit on the floor of the meeting without reissuing 14 days notice for the motion. So short answer is probably, but we could help you through that.
Okay, no, if they're having like their pay suspended until they file the reports, I think this works. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Any more discussion on the motion? I'll go one more time. Any more discussion on the motion that the bylaws be amended with the text that I read out before?
And just a note before we go to a vote, all of the bylaw proposals that you folks see today require a 2/3 majority approval, not a simple majority. So we will need to count a little bit more closely, and we'll ask you to keep your voting cards up until we tell you to lower them.
All right. Seeing no more discussion, we will go to a vote. Be it resolved as a special resolution that the bylaws be amended by adding a new bylaw 14.6 to be read as follows. You've got the text of the motion. All those in favor, please raise your voting cards and keep them held high so that we can count.
I think there'll be an overwhelming majority.
Okay, all those opposed, please raise your voting cards and keep them held high so we can count them.
It's approved.
Motion carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Just some context for this next motion. This next motion is a little lengthy, so there is a QR code on the screen that you can scan the QR code with your phone, and it will show you the text of the proposed amendment. So item 5.1.2 is a bylaw amendment relating to director eligibility in terms of academic standing. The suggested motion on the agenda is be it resolved as a special resolution that the bylaws be amended as follows in bylaw 7 by adding a new paragraph 13 as follows. Subject to further eligibility rules established by the board, in order to be eligible to be nominated to run for or to accept office as a director of the society, a member must, at the time that they are nominated for election and, if elected, take office under bylaw 8.1 or bylaw 8.5, or invited to join the board as a student representative on the university's board of governors or senate under bylaw 7.1 G or H, or in any other manner. Have a cumulative grade point average at the university of at least 2.00 if the member has completed at least 9 credits of study at the university, and consent to the society requesting and the university providing the information about the member's academic standing at the university, including personally identifiable information that is required to verify the member's satisfaction of the academic standing requirements in these bylaws. And this consent must be effective from the time the member submits a nomination form and, if elected, until the member later ceases to be a director. And any revocation of this consent is also deemed to be a withdrawal from the election process or, if and once elected, a resignation from the board. In bylaw 14, by adding a new paragraph 6 as follows. The following individuals are prohibited from being nominated, running for, or accepting office as a director of the society, whether elected under bylaw 8.1 or Bylaw 8.5, invited to join the board under Bylaw 7.1G or H, or in any other manner, and if a current director later becomes prohibited under this section, that director's seat is vacated. A full-time employee of the society, the university, or any other student society, or any national or provincial student organization, whether or not the society is a member of that national or provincial student organization. Any employee, officer, or director of the Capilano Courier Publishing Society, except that a person who is only a contributor and who holds no other office at the Capilano Courier Publishing Society is not thereby disqualified. Any person who has been disqualified by the elections administrator or the arbitration panel by reason of election campaign misconduct in either of the previous general election or by-election. Any person for whom one or both of their cumulative grade point average or term grade point average are less than 2.00 for 2 consecutive academic terms, or for whom one or both of their cumulative grade point average or term grade point average are less than 1.67 for any 1 academic term, or any person who has been suspended or required to withdraw by the university other than on an interim basis, whether for academic standing, conduct, or any other reason, but a director who is suspended or required to withdraw shall not have their seat declared vacant until all university appeal options have been exhausted, and if an appeal is successful, the director may remain in office. Is there a mover for this very long motion? Moved in the back there, seconded by Nico. Is there any, we'll go to floor discussion and after we hear a comment from staff.
Yeah, so this too is a recommendation of the previous board of directors. It was adopted on the recommendation of the governance committee and then approved by the board in May to come to this body. The key point of this, I know that the language changes look really long. The 2 key changes here are introducing an academic or GPA requirement for student leaders. So if a director has a GPA of less than 2.00, which means that they would be on academic alert for 2 consecutive semesters, then that director would lose their seat on the board or be ineligible to run for election if they were still in the nomination stage. If someone's GPA for any 1 term is less than 1.67, which means less than a C- average, then that director's seat would be vacated or they would be ineligible to run for election again. The second series of changes come from the board's recommendation as well as advice from legal counsel that additional eligibility qualifications belong more properly in the bylaws than in the board's election policy. And so most of those changes are actually status quo, but are being moved from policy into the bylaws instead, requiring membership approval. The change in there isn't explicitly a mention. I will just note paragraph E at the bottom of page 2 of the report circulated. There is no, it's implied that if someone is expelled from the university, they can't continue on the board of directors. We're proposing to make that explicitly stated.
Thank you very much. Is there any discussion on this motion? I'll ask again, is there any discussion on this motion? All right, hearing and seeing no discussion on the motion, we'll go to a vote. Was this moved? Yeah. Okay, sorry. Be it resolved as a special, I'm not gonna read the whole thing again. Be it resolved as a special resolution that the bylaws be amended as follows. If all those in favor, please raise your voting cards and keep them held high. This is a 2/3 vote. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your voting cards and keep them held high. Motion carried. Thank you. Item 5.1.3 on the agenda is a bylaw amendment relating to biographies and campaign platforms. The suggested motion on the agenda is be it resolved as a special resolution that the bylaws be amended in Bylaw 8 by adding a new paragraph 16 as follows. 1, in order for a person to be nominated in any general election or by-election and in addition to any other requirements in these bylaws or the election policies, a person must submit as a part of their nomination papers a portfolio that includes at least A biography statement of at least 1,000 characters and no more than 2,500 characters, which must include an overview of the candidate's academic, volunteer, leadership, and personal achievements, and B, a campaign platform of at least 2,000 and no more than 5,000 characters, which must include the nominee's proposed priorities for both the society as a whole and the portfolio for which they are seeking to be a nominee. 2, the society must display a nominee's portfolio on either the society's official website or an alternative digital platform approved for that purpose by the board. Is there a mover for this motion? Moved by Nico, seconded by, is it Abhijit? Seconded by Abhijit. Any discussion on this motion? Chris?
So this too is a recommendation from the previous board of directors on the recommendation of the governance committee and then approved by the board from among options prepared by staff at the board's direction. The TLDR of this, the character counts are included because they're easier to enforce. This works out to a biography statement of between approximately 200 and 500 words, so a 200-word minimum, and a candidate platform of approximately 400 to 1,000 words. So that's how that translates in practice, probably into word count based on averages. The character count is just easier to implement from a tech perspective when we're accepting nominations.
Thank you. Any discussion on this motion? We'll go ahead, Laura.
Thank you. I just wanted to, because I think I read this somewhere, so I just wanted to double check that if someone proposes something that's completely undoable, the CSU has a mechanism to say, hey, you can't promise free parking to students or something like that.
Chris?
This is an eternal question at student societies. That was discussed during the previous board of directors. They did discuss whether they could introduce ways of vetoing or editing campaign platforms and candidate statements. Ultimately, the board did not approve any of those limitations. There's a lot of subjectivity involved in setting campaign promises, and different reasonable people might have different reasonable opinions about what is and is not possible or within the jurisdiction of the Students' Union. That said, I can say separate from this proposal, staff are working on a proposal for in future fall terms before the general elections in the spring, introducing a kind of campaign school type concept where folks could get impartial advice in advance to set themselves up for success in the general election about what things are reasonable, what things are not. They're not going to kick Chartwells off of campus that year if it's year 3 of a 10-year agreement. Things like that, that someone just might not have enough context unless they've chatted with staff. So I think often those misstatements perhaps are innocent or naive, but not necessarily malicious or a reason for disqualification. And I think that's what informed the board not approving those limitations last year.
Okay, oh, that's a really good one. So then we can become like a kind of mandatory thing to assist one of those workshops before, well, that's a future thing. Okay, never mind. Yeah, that sounds good. Thanks.
Any other discussion on the motion? Hearing and seeing none, we will go to a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your voting cards and please raise them high. This is a 2/3 majority motion. Thank you. All those opposed, please raise your voting cards high. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Item 5.1.4, a bylaw amendment regarding mandatory candidates forums. The suggested motion on the agenda is, be it resolved as a special resolution that the bylaws be amended in Bylaw 8 by adding a new paragraph 17 as follows. If a candidate's forum or debate is organized pursuant to an election policy and under the authority or supervision of the elections administrator as a part of a general election or by-election, a candidate who misses the forum or debate without the written approval of the elections administrator is disqualified as a candidate. Is there a mover for this motion? Moved Nico, seconded Divyansh. Is there any discussion on this motion? Chris?
This as well is a recommendation from the previous board of directors on the recommendation of the governance committee and then with the board's approval.
Any discussion on the motion? Are you getting up to the lineup? Go to the speaker? Okay. Nico?
Yeah, I think it's really important that candidates attend the candidate forum because that's a way to get in front of students who they'll be representing. And I think this is quite reasonable given that you can reach out to the elections administrator to get written approval to miss it if you do have like a conflicting schedule. But I think this is really important because it makes it very visible for students to participate in the elections and hear what candidates have to say.
Thank you. Any more discussion on the motion? Hearing and seeing none, we shall go to a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your voting cards and keep them held high. This is a 2/3 motion. All those opposed, please raise your voting cards and keep them held high. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. Now we're going to be moving on to 5.2, consideration of ordinary resolutions. I'll just give a note before we move on to this. We've done a fairly good job of staying quiet while people are talking and while motions are being debated and discussed. I really appreciate it. Let's keep that going. The second is that resolutions and motions and discussions about those can sometimes get heated. What I'd like us to all remember is what I'd like us to all remember is to be respectful. That's not a request, it's a direction. We're gonna have to be respectful here. Otherwise, I will use my authority as chair. And the second thing is to, again, please remember that you only get to speak when the chair calls on you, and I'm going to try my best to make sure that everybody gets to speak. Thank you very much. All right, consideration of ordinary resolutions. Item 5.2.1, pressure on Capilano University on Israel war against Gaza and Lebanon. The suggested motion on the agenda is, be it resolved that the Capilano Students Union advocates for Palestinian students and advocates for Capilano University to make a statement on the Israel war against Gaza and Lebanon and to release information about the university's investment portfolio. Is there, we'll go to floor discussion in one moment. Chris? Sorry. Is there a mover or seconder for this motion? Moved Abhijit, seconded Nico. Chris?
Yes, and per the Societies Act, the CSU will provide an opportunity to the proponents first to state and introduce their proposal. And so with that, we'll give it over to Olivia.
Olivia?
Hi, can everybody hear me okay? Awesome. Okay, so I'm Olivia. I'm from CapU Students for Palestine, and this is our agenda item. Our motion is made of two fundamental parts. First, we want Capilano University to acknowledge the conflict that's going on right now in Israel's war on Gaza. Why do we want that? Because it affects students at Capilano University and faculty and staff. It's not like a faraway reality. It's something that people are personally affected by, and Capilano University has a history of acknowledging that in statements. For example, when the war in Ukraine started, the president wrote a letter that, explained resources for Ukrainian students and directed them towards support. And that's important because it shows that the university is supporting its students in a difficult time. Now, saying that what is happening right now in Gaza and Lebanon is not a difficult time is, in our opinion, unacceptable. The second part of our motion is to get Capilano University to release its investment portfolios and financial records in general so that we can move progressively towards divestment. That is really important because Israel's war on Gaza is not as I said, a faraway reality. Israel's war effort can only exist with international funding. That is funding from countries, such as the US and Canada too, indirectly through its sales of munitions to the US, and private companies. Private companies have investors. Universities are investors. Capilano University, in specific, through its partnership with the Royal Bank of Canada, is an investor in General Dynamics, which is a weapon manufacturer that creates bombs that are used in Gaza right now. We're talking about genocide. It's important that we vote to pass this motion, because being silent about this means being complicit in the deaths of 40,000 Palestinians. 11 of those 40 are children. We cannot be complicit in this, and in our small way, we must do something. And so I propose that the Capilano Students Union pressure Capilano University to making a statement and releasing its financial records. Thank you very much. If you have any questions for me specifically, let me know.
Thank you very much. Any discussion on the motion? We'll hear, so you'll be next. Go ahead, please.
Hello. Just wanted to speak on the fact that regardless of what you think about what's going on in Gaza, I think it's important that the university reveal their investment portfolios, because you want to know where your tuition is going. You want to know if your tuition is funding climate change, oil and gas. You want to know if your tuition is funding weapons manufacturers. So I think, again, I think the motion of the second part especially, Capilano everyone should know about their investment portfolios. And if they're hiding something, that should be known.
Thank you very much. You're next.
Thank you, Speaker, for bringing this very important subject to the floor. And I think it's ready to call to a motion. I think she articulated everything very clearly.
Thank you very much. Any more discussion on this motion? Yes, please come line up.
Hi everyone. I just want to say, giving respect.
Sorry, can you please
Yeah.
raise the mic? Thank you very much.
Hi
Go ahead.
everyone. So I'm just want to say, giving respect to all the communities, our university should not put pressure on Israel or any other community. We have to stand united. We shouldn't stand for a war. We shouldn't pressure any Israel or any other. We shouldn't take any responsibility or do not debate on this. It's just like international topics, and our university should represent all countries, whether they are in a war or whether they are not in war. So we should stand still. We shouldn't comment on this.
Thank you very much. Any more discussion on this topic? Yes, please go ahead. If you could adjust the mic down. There
Yes.
you go. Thank you.
Hello, just to respond to the last speaker,
Sorry, can we just please not do side conversations to give respect to those who have the floor? Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Thank you. To echo what Ren brought up, we are already responsible because our tuition money is currently going towards specific interests that are Israel's interests, and in this case, genocidal interests and violence, and even if we want to think about universities, like the loss of universities in Palestine, soon to be Lebanon. So we are already responsible, and the way that we're unaware of how we're responsible is the first thing that we need. We need clarity about where our tuition is going, and so that we can exactly never be involved in war ever again, currently and in the future, so that all our money that we're putting into this institution is used responsibly and the way that we agree with, because it is our money. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any more discussion on this motion? Yeah. Go ahead.
Thank you. And I really want to echo Livia's point from earlier that the university did come out with a statement about the war in Russia and Ukraine, but has not come out with one for the situation with Palestine and Israel. So, like, the university is already not neutral. They've already commented on international wars. So I think that it is important that we do the little bit we can.
Thank you very much. Any more discussion on this motion? I'll give it one more go. Any more discussion on this motion? All right. This motion is a simple majority vote. All those in favor of the Capilano Students Union advocating for Palestinian students and advocating for Capilano University to make a statement on the Israel war against Gaza and Lebanon and to release information about the university's investment portfolio, please hold your voting cards high. All those in favor? Thank you very much. All those opposed, please raise your voting cards high. Thank you very much. Motion carried. Item 5.2.2, election campaigning in classrooms. The suggested motion is be it resolved that the members rescind the changes made by the Board of Directors on September 6th, 2024 to the election procedures, BD 06.1, prohibiting classroom talks, and thereby reinstate classroom talks as a permitted campaign activity. Is there a mover? Moved Abhijit, this seconded. Thank you. Is there any discussion on this motion? We'll go to a word from staff before we go to Nico.
Yeah, so just explaining again, this is a petitioned agenda item with 100 or more signatures. We're required to give the proponents under the Act an opportunity to present their proposal, and that proponent is Nico Williamson.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Nico.
So I have participated in 3 of the CSU elections, and I'm sure if you've been here for any one of those elections, you've witnessed various levels of intensity of campaign activity in the hallways and cafeteria. I think that the decision to ban campaigning in classrooms will only intensify that harassment type of vibe with campaigning, and the majority of students I talk to would prefer to be talked to in a classroom setting as opposed to being stopped in the hallway. I've had friends tell me they were harassed in the bathroom about elections, which is absolutely ridiculous. I've talked to teachers about it. The majority of teachers actually like to see their students getting involved in leadership. And this change is not in the best interest of students. I'll read out the rationale that was put here. Campaigning in classrooms is sometimes very disrespectful for the candidates. Some instructors will not allow candidates to do that. Also, some students will make candidate feel uncomfortable during the campaign by ignoring them. So my suggestion is to prohibit campaigns in the classroom from next elections. So yeah, that is all about candidates that chose to run in these elections, and it was always up to the instructor's discretion to say no or yes for the student campaigning in the classroom. And they had up to 5 minutes to do their campaign, and the instructor always had the right to cut them off. So this isn't saying that you have to campaign in classrooms, but I don't think it is right to take away that option, and that is just gonna make election issues worse for everyone who is on campus. And I don't think any of us want that. And yeah, I think students should have the freedom to campaign in whatever ways are accessible to them, and it should be accessible, and students should have the right to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we have a message from a member who's not here.
So, Angad Brar, the president of the Capilano Students Union, is not in attendance today because he is on CSU business at a conference around sustainability hosted by an external organization. They have asked, as the original proponent of the classroom talks motion that was approved by board, for a brief statement to be read for membership. I am a member of staff. If there are any questions or debate on the president's statement, I'll need to ask elected leadership to take those. But the statement reads as follows. The main reason behind the decision to prohibit campaigning in classes is to leave the study time for studying. Suppose a class has a duration of 1 hour, 20 minutes, and 5 candidates went to campaign and 1 took 5 minutes. It would take 25 minutes of class time. It's not fair for students, and many students didn't like it when candidates campaigned in class because they were in that class to study and they paid for that time to learn something. I can say that from my personal experience. Also, prohibiting campaigning will not limit candidates' voter coverage. It's just that a candidate will have to work a little harder to reach out to voters in different parts of the campuses.
Thank you very much. Is there any more discussion on this motion? Yes. And then you'll be second, Lydia. Yeah.
My name's Teresa de la Bourse-Sodier. My number's 81. And I think campaigning is just part of our democratic society in Canada, North America. And it is true, it does take up over class time. However, as students, we also want to be open and aware of all issues, including the one on Gaza, and hear different perspectives and different views. And perhaps we might have to spend 20 minutes tolerating someone that we really don't want to vote for. But at the end of that 20 minutes, we'll know that we don't want to vote for them. And once they've done their speech, they're done. We can move on and get back to learning.
Thank you. In the black jacket, and then you'll be the one person behind will be next. Yeah, no, you go for it.
Hello. I agree with what you just said, but and I would like to reiterate what Nico mentioned about instructors' ability to say no to campaigners and for them to not come to class. It's easy enough for an instructor to be like, oh, like I feel like this class time would be better used for something else. We don't want campaigners at this time, right? They're there as the literal instructor. They know how to use the time that they have to teach their students. So I think it makes sense to go back to the previous system where that person is in charge of deciding that, instead of there being a complete ban. Because I also feel like in past CSU election, what I've learned most about the people that were running were was in classroom campaigning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In the pink.
So I agree
Can you
that.
adjust the mics, please, a little bit? There you go.
Is it
Thank
okay
you.
now?
Yeah.
So I agree to the students who believe that we should not be doing classroom campuses because it disrupts the study time. But I believe as we take the instructor's permission first, so it is okay because the instructor knows it better if the class has some time for the discussion of the permission of the campaign or not. It's right, they know it. And sometimes I've seen instructors say no to the candidates when they feel that they have a lot of stuff to cover in the class and they don't have enough time, but they will allow the candidate only to campaign only when they have enough time in the classroom. So I think there is no problem with candidates doing their campaign in classroom, so it's okay.
Thank you very much. Nico?
So, in response to the president's statement about separating academics and campaigning, there was nothing in the rationale of this motion saying anything about separating academics and campaigning. It says it's disrespectful for the candidates. Instructors will not allow candidates to do that. Some students will make the candidate feel uncomfortable by ignoring them. Like, that has nothing to do with separating academics. I also want to point out that this ban impacts all campuses. It's not just here. It also impacts our Squamish campus, it impacts our Sunshine Coast campus, and it also applies to online classrooms. So students wouldn't be able to make a post on like the eLearn messaging board. And that leaves out our other campuses, which are already underrepresented in CSU elections, being away from this main campus. Like, they deserve the right to speak to their class and make their campaign to be able to advocate for students. It's not right to take away that option.
Thank you very much. Arpan?
Yeah, so the rationale behind passing on this one, according to my perspective, was leaving like study and the student politics alone. Because when there was elections going on, I've seen some things in the classroom. There was a candidate who did his campaigning, and then the other one came. So the teacher prohibited him, and it leaves on the teacher remarking as a racist. That's what some of the student remarks. Because if we are like having elections for 12 or 15 position, that leaves to a number of candidates, and no teacher the student that is sitting in the classroom, he's sitting because there is a notice that he have to study over there. There's nothing mentioned like you will have to spare some time for the candidates who gonna speak up and to listening about their campaigns and all. And the other thing is we already got the whole campus wide to connect with the students from where they come, whether that's a parking lot, that's a bus station from where they come, and from where they go home, like the parking lot and the bus station. So you already got them covered. Why do you want the 30 students sitting in the classroom for their teacher to teach? You want to to aggressively have your speeches over them. And even if the teacher is allowing them, she couldn't spare that many time a candidate can speak up. And we already got the library in here. We got the forms where the students can ask the question and know about their leader. I think anyone who will be interested in listening them can always listen to them anywhere. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Since you two have already spoken, we're going to go to the person in the denim jacket, and then the person in the brown behind them, and then we're going to hear from you folks again, if that's okay.
Hi, everyone.
Thanks very much. Go ahead.
My name is Abhijit. I'm from the last board. And according to President's statement, it says, leaving study time for studying. Many students didn't like that. Do you guys have a survey of how many students didn't like that voting in class campaigns? And he says that it's from his personal experience. I believe that one personal experience can't decide what other 9,000 students thinks about it. And moreover, if we do in-class campaigning, if we ban it, it's for studying, let's ban campaigning in cafeteria because people are eating over there. Let's ban campaigning in library because people are studying over here. Let's ban everything. I think, for me as a student, I had this stage fear and stuff. So I overtook that with in-class campaigning, and I think if a student is confident enough, he will go in the class and would say whatever he thinks, and instructors always allow everyone. There hasn't been any case where instructors don't really say that, oh, we don't want you. And if we talk about the racist comments mentioned by any other candidate, students are mature enough here to understand that whether the student is saying based on his personal experience, or in fact, the professor itself is racist. And I also want to ask a question to the board members, how many of you have attended in-class campaigning during this election? It's a question to the board members. How many of you have went in-class campaigning?
We're not going to do straw polls and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
if they went in, right, and they don't really have any, let's say, did you feel disrespected or something? It's based on just one person, right? Wait, that's everything I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm just gonna also say again a reminder. This is people clearly want to speak on this motion, and just a reminder. Let's not do side conversations. Again, we've got the person. Oh, Sophia, and then we're gonna again because Nico and the other person have spoken a couple of times. We're gonna go to the rest of the lineup first, and then you folks will get to speak just to make sure we can hear from everybody at least once. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. So my name's Sophia, and I'm a member of the board. And when this came up in a board meeting, I voted against it. while I totally understand that we pay a lot of money for our tuition and for our class time, we also pay a lot of money to the CSU. I think it would be inappropriate for us to outright ban classroom talks for the reason that we have a lot of students that are asynchronous. So we're talking about all these people that come to school, come to Sunshine Coast, come to Squamish campus, but we're not really talking about all these people that take online classes. We really are cutting out a large majority of the population. A lot of people don't know when the elections are, and it is through these classroom talks that they are able to get a wider understanding, not only of the candidates, but also of how voting works, how the CSU works. To the president's original rationale that I think Nico brought up about how it's disrespectful, I could say the same thing about me being here. I'm sitting here talking to everybody on a mic, and there's about 4 people having conversations. It's none of my business. I don't really care. At the end of the day, it was my choice to come up in front of people and speak. And similarly, it's the candidate's choice to come up in front of their own people and speak. It's this idea that we just outright banned it. I think it was inappropriate for the board to do, so I think this is a great opportunity for us to, as a membership, go back, think about it, whether we want to reword this in future board meetings or whether we want to propose different changes, like say, you limit it to 3 minutes, 3 people per class, something like that. I think that would be a good option, but I would really, really encourage you guys to vote yes on this.
Thank you very much. Sanjit, please.
Hello folks, I'm Sanchit. I'm the Arts and Science representative at Capilano Students Union. So the reason why I think that we should vote no to this motion, because I feel like we should keep this, our student leadership outside of the classrooms. I know like the time period when the elections are conducted is near like March, ending February. So having these, having the nominations at that time and people coming into the classrooms. So already lots of the students are frustrated by the campaigning, excessive campaigning, which is done in the library. So many people don't want to focus again on these conversations when they are sitting inside the classroom. Yes, I agree that candidates do take about like, even if we say 3 minutes or 5 minutes of the class time, I agree with that. Even if the time in terms of numbers is less, but it disrupts the attention span of the student attending that class. If I'm there, like in my mind would rather go into the elections thinking about the CSU, maybe some email I read. It's a little distracting. I know there are lots of distractions today. Like we also have our phones in the class, but this when a student is sitting in their class and focusing on their professor, and suddenly they see someone is talking about politics, it just stops the flow. So that's why we already have such a limited time. Normally classes are like an hour and 20 minutes. And even if we take the time and include the politics, it's not fair for every student. Every student is not there to listen to these conversations when they've already listened to them in their library or in their way to their classrooms, in the cafeteria and everywhere. The campaigning can be done in terms of plenty of ways. There are posters. People reach out in person. People reach out on phones, by texts, by Instagram, by posting videos, which happened in the last by-elections. And also, the candidate statement forms, the Capilano Courier hosts them. So it's like so the candidate forum is held in this room, and it gives a chance to every student sitting in here ask any questions to the candidate, and they literally see the candidate being interviewed. So it is like a proper setting where these things should be held. So that's why I feel like we should vote no for this motion, and we shouldn't have classroom campaigning. Thank you, folks.
Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Yuvraj, and as Sanchit said, I strongly agree with him, and every opinion is respected, first of all, right? And it's just my saying that even I agree that campaigning in classrooms should not be there because, as he said, that the teaching flow and stuff, every student pays a lot of money, to get that knowledge to study. And there are many students, like especially I would say international students, who are in that phase where they are facing lots of problem in understanding and catching up with them, because it's not shameful for us, but it's somewhere that we try to cope up, and many of us are doing excellent, but there are few who are really facing problems and issues, and everybody wants to utilize their time efficiently. So in classrooms, even there are many students who are very much interested in politics and stuff, so there are lots of ways to catch up, and there are lots of ways you can reach out to candidates and to different students, to see what, to take the suggestions or to guide what you guys are up to and what are your plans, so that they can hear you and they can, make a decision that whether they want to vote or not. Being a candidate, even if I would talk about myself, I haven't campaigned in classrooms. I haven't asked, student to vote. And even if like somebody said that, they should ask professors, of course, they're respected and everybody needs to ask them, but there are 20 students sitting in the classroom as well. Not everybody has the same opinion. Not everybody wants to, engage in that. So that's totally a particular preference. And if a student leader wants to campaign, they have many areas. They have library launch. They have, many different areas of universities. They can catch up students and merge, but why just in, their study time? So we are paying for each and every minute covered, and we are paying really a high amount, and I guess that needs to be respected. Rest everybody's opinion, as I said, is respected, So that's just my saying. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Priya.
Hi everyone, my name is Priya McMurtry and I am a Senate representative on the board. A lot of what's been talked about is the divide between academics and sort of the CSU. But if you want to separate the two, you actually can't, because if you want us to stop sort of campaigning in classrooms and you want to really have that divide, then why are we advocating for lower international student tuition? Why are we asking for the final exam schedule to be released early? These are all issues that affect every single person in this room, and every single one of you has a stake in what the CSU does. You have every right to have every medium to hear about the student leaders that are coming in to roles or running. That's all I have to say, and I really want you to internalize that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we'll go to you folks. Thanks for waiting.
As the previous speaker said, that we are also concerned about the issues with our academics, and those issues are addressed by our CSU board members, right? And so I think it's perfectly okay for the candidates to campaign in class, because we are paying a significant amount to be in the university itself, and while we are in the library studying, so many candidates are approaching us. I myself have been approached while I was preparing for a test in the library, like 4 times, just within an hour. So that's also what I don't want, right? But in a classroom, if you are concerned about that your study time is being disrupted, or you have paid for the class or anything, it just takes 2 minutes for the candidate. I think that's not a lot. And while those 2 minutes, if you don't want to hear the candidate, what you can do instead is you can just revise your notes or whatever the professor said. You can go through and see if you have any doubts, and you can just do your own work. You don't have to essentially listen to the candidate, right? But when you are in the library or the student lounge, when it's one-to-one, you are not even able to understand what they stand for, because one-to-one conversation, I think, is not that effective. It might be effective in some areas, but not all. But when a student campaigns in class, they are more clear about, because they have to be clear about, they are talking to like 30 or 40 people at one time, so they have to tell a lot more in 2 minutes than they will tell you, like whatever they tell you in person, and that's 5-minute conversation, right? Which you don't want to have. So for me, I'd rather not have those in-person conversations and campaigning, and have the classroom campaigning, because then I can have a better understanding in less amount of time. And I don't know, as Abhijit also said, I think then we'll have to ban people from campaigning in the library as well, because it's really irritating, to be very honest, but you cannot really ban it. You can say no to the person that, yeah, I'm busy right now, so I don't want to talk. In a similar way, the instructors in the classroom, they can also say that I'm sorry, this class is going on, or even they can put a poster or they can write it on the boards that no campaigning for this class, right? So they have an option as well, as you do when you're in the lounge. So I think there's no problem, and we should not ban classroom campaigning.
Thank you very much. Nico?
So there's some mention of being able to campaign in other locations, like the parking lot or the bus stop or the library. The last election, candidates were banned from entering the library altogether because the amount of intense campaign activity and harassment of students and that makes regular students feel shut down from the process and not want to hear anything about it when the CSU advocates for students. And so about the classroom talks, like you have to email your professor ahead of time. Like some professors are flexible and like if you ask them then, they'll be like, okay, sure. But like in the rules, you have to ask ahead of time. And there's plenty of professors that say, no, I'm sorry, there's too much content to get through. And then that means campaigning is done in a space where it can be moderated and regulated to make sure that there's no harassment. When people are studying in the library or in Birch, like there's many candidates going around approaching people like really intensely, and then they don't really have an out in the same way they would in a classroom, where they hear the campaign, hear the pitch, and then just decide for themselves if they're voting for them or not. About the point about separating academics from politics, like it's student advocacy, it's not politics. You can't do student advocacy without the students. Like why, like the CSU advocates for things like food security that impact students, housing security that impacts students, lowering international student fees, getting rid of the MSP fee for international students. That is all about students. Students deserve to hear from candidates about what issues they care about, what work they want to do, and yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much. Yes, you in the green. And please just readjust the mic if you can.
Okay, so I just have one thing to say, that I would rather prefer 5-minute classroom campaigning instead of being harassed in the library or the cafeteria to vote for a certain person. That's it.
Thank you very much. Any more discussion on this motion? Arpan?
Yeah, I would like to say just a comment on one of the previous speaker. So you said like when they do the campaigning in the library, you feel like you're getting irritated. And by the way, at that time, you're totally free. You can leave the library lounge, you can go elsewhere. What about the students who are sitting in a classroom just to study? What options are they got? Like to go out of the class for how many minutes, post 20 minutes, and after 20 minutes, the instructor is gonna start a test or like something, they're gonna miss out, right? So if you're getting irritated just by the campaigning in the library lounges and everything, where you got an option, you can leave at any time and you can go anywhere else. What about the classroom? What about the people who are getting irritated over there, right? And the other thing is that the CSU stopped like the library lounge like campaigning when there were like 3 days voting period. At that time, everyone was coming in like in the library lounge. It was all like a huge mess. Like some people were getting some candidates while they were entering and getting them forced into voting for them as well. That was about that. We never banned like it was never banned like a library launch campaign. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any more discussion on this motion? Yeah. Oh, I think Nico's coming over there. So just to same with this person, right? Thanks. So they can't speak again if they need to. Any more discussion on this motion? Go ahead.
she was saying those who were standing in the election, they are harassing the students to give them vote. I also stand in the elections. We never harass any student. We just speak to them very politely that we are standing in the elections. Do you want to vote for us or something? So it's just like that. We don't hold anyone. So harassment is not a good word for that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let's
not harassment.
Let's also keep it instead of speaking about individual people, let's keep it on the issue of campaigning. Are you in line again? Please come forward. And can you adjust the mic down? There you go.
Okay.
There you go. Thanks.
So the thing is, like when I'm in a library and I'm studying.
Excuse me, sorry. Let's please give our undivided attention to the speaker. Thank you very much. Go ahead.
So I'm like in the middle of studying for a lecture or something and someone comes, I can't just straight away say no to that person. Because firstly, it gets just very awkward and you can't just leave the lounge. Because finally you are having a concentration and trying to study for some subject, and then you have the option to leave a lounge and go where, like to cafeteria to study. I don't understand that thing.
Thank you very much. Any more discussion on this motion? I'll go one more time. Any more discussion on this motion? Hearing and seeing none, we'll go to a vote. This is a 2/3 motion. This needs a 2/3 majority to overturn the board policy. So be it resolved. Excuse me, sorry. Let's keep the side conversations down to a minimum. This is very important. I'm going to read the motion one more time, and then I'm going to ask for those in favor and those against. All those in favor of the motion, be it resolved that the members rescind the changes made by the Board of Directors on September 6th, 2024 to the election procedures, BD 06.1, prohibiting classroom talks, and thereby reinstate classroom talks as a permitted campaign activity. This is a 2/3 majority vote. All those in favor, please raise your voting cards and keep them held high. Sorry, can you keep, please, if you're voting in favor, please keep your voting cards held high. Are you holding yours up? 32. We got 32. All those opposed to the motion, please keep your cards held high. The motion is defeated. The motion does not pass. The next item on the agenda is item 5.2.3, board attendance, retroactive policy implementation changes. The suggested motion on the agenda is be it resolved that the members A, rescind the decision of the Board of Directors to delay the implementation of in-person and camera-on attendance requirements in the board meetings policy BD 10 from May 31st, 2024 to September 1st, 2024, and prohibit the Board of Directors in the future from making retroactive changes to the implementation date of a policy. Is there a mover for this motion? Moved, Nico, seconded, Priya. Is there discussion? Sorry, word from staff first, then we'll go to the floor.
So per the act, the proponents of the motion were 100 or more petitioners. The proponent presenting today is Laura.
Thank you. We'll hear from the proponent first. Laura, please go ahead.
Thank you. And it has two parts, this motion, and we're gonna vote, I guess, for each of the parts individually? Together, okay, never mind. So basically what a policy does is that it sets a rule for everyone afterwards. So policies are not just for this board, it's for all the boards that comes afterwards. And so the thing is that the policy has a date that says, okay, from today, this policy, like people have to follow this new rule that we all agree that it's important. So it turns out that the board can change this date. So for example, if we say this is the new rule from January, they can say, okay, but for this reason, we're gonna push it to February. And so they can break the rule during January and nothing happens. So I think this is dangerous, and that's why that B is to not allow, if we set a policy, then we cannot change the date so that some people can break this rule for this amount of time and then say, okay, from now onwards, we are actually gonna, follow the rule. So that's B. And now A is the example that happened. So Chris, could you let us know approximately what's the compensation for each board member for assisting a board of directors meeting?
Yes. So it's not on a per meeting basis. The board fees and expenses policy pays to board members approximately $380 a month. And for the executive team, it's bi-weekly. It's just over $900 before tax for vice presidents and just over $1,000 before tax for the president every 2 weeks.
Thank you, Chris. So I think because board members make such an important job, which is to make decisions on our behalf, they're paid fairly for their time to sit and attend these meetings. So what has been happening, I guess, since COVID, because we had to move our meetings into online, and it's an important thing because people live so far away. So it's important that they have the option of assisting online. However, if you're paid a fair amount to just sit there, listen, give your opinion, and discuss, then they agree that it's not fair for people to sit in the meetings with their cameras off and just introducing themselves at the beginning and then saying nothing else during the whole meeting, sometimes not even voting. So because this is not okay, they created a policy that says, okay, if you're gonna assist online, it's okay, but you have to have your camera on for at least 65% of the time. And because maybe you have to go to the washroom or whatever, but you have to have your camera on. And and then you have to be in person a certain amount of times. Anyway, there was this policy to regulate online assistance in meetings because, they're being compensated to be there. So we should be able to, and I'm not saying this board in particular, I don't know which board members are not fulfilling this policy. This is not personal, and we're not supposed to be focusing on individual cases. We're just thinking from now on, we don't know if future board members are gonna be online paying attention, trying to make the best decisions for students. So we have to make this policy bulletproof. It needs to take into account that maybe some people are just putting they're just wearing their AirPods and then doing whatever else with their camera off or watching a show or whatever. So it's important to see that they're actually paying attention and that our student fees are going to good use. So I think because we can agree that it's not okay to change the dates on policies, what happened is that for this board accountability policy that said that they had to have their cameras on, they changed the date. So it was supposed to be starting in April, but they changed it to September. So during those months, there were some people that were eligible for removal because they were not fulfilling these rules. So they changed it to September, and now it's like they had 2 strikes, and they were I don't know how many strikes, but they were 1 strike away from being removed, and they changed the date of the policy, and now they have 0 strikes again. So I think that's not fair. So, Any questions? I have to run to give a midterm, wish me luck. So I hope Nico can answer any questions or,
Thank you very much. We're gonna hear from Chris for a moment.
Yes, just as folks are coming up to the microphone to speak to this motion, if they would like to, a quick procedural note in the interest of transparency. The outcome did not change. The motion would have been defeated regardless based on the votes. However, we misstated the voting threshold for item 5.2.2. It was a simple majority vote. In order to overturn a board decision, the vote would have failed on a majority anyway. We just wanted to note that correction.
Yeah, there were more people who voted against than for. Is there any more discussion on this motion? Go for it. And again, just a reminder, we're going to keep the side conversations to a minimum, and we're going to focus. We're going to keep focusing on the policies and the procedures as opposed to individuals. And you folks have been doing a pretty good job so far, so I want to thank you for that. Go ahead.
So hi everyone, I am Ekam Sandhu, VP Student Fair. Sorry.
Stop holding the microphone, it's making noise.
Oh, okay.
Just stand here.
Okay. Yeah, so this motion was passed by us after like absent were marked for us, and when this motion is against me and our VP Equity Dilkaran and our two of the board members more. So for my reason, if I say like I was in India, I went there for an emergency. There was my family member passed away, so I didn't attend any training session. So I was not there for it. Like the camera should be on. So I always attended a weekly meeting with Chris, and I usually attended those with the camera off. And when I came back, I came in July. So I was like, it skipped out of my mind, like the camera should be on. But I and Dilkaran attended those meetings, and we worked well. And it's not like we haven't attended those meetings and it's marked as absent. So I think 4 or 5 meetings were marked as absent. So Chris and Angar told me like these are marked as absent, and if one more absent, then we must be removed from this position. So we were unaware, and but I told them like we attended those meetings, and we just passed this motion that this will take place after September. And because in summer everyone is on vacation and everyone is outside, sometimes they can't on the camera.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna steer the conversation back. Let's make sure that we're focusing on the policy at hand and not individuals. Thanks.
Yeah, no any individual, just telling the reason why it was marked as absent. So yeah, this is the reason like why the camera was off. But after they told us like the camera should be on, me personally, I always attended meeting in person, not online. So yeah, this is all what I can say. Why it's marked as absent all the meetings. So, yeah.
Thank you, Sophia.
Yeah, so like I said before, I'm on the board and I typically have voted against a lot of the motions that have been brought up. This was one that I actually agreed with. Just like Laura did, I'm going to start with item B. I don't think it's in the best interest of potential boards moving forward to prohibit them from making retroactive changes. I think we can only pass decision-making items when we have quorum, which means we have an appropriate amount of people that can vote. And sometimes, due to various instances, we're not able to do that. Whether that be too many people are sick, it's final exam season, it's midterms. An example that I can think of where this would be an issue would be something like the fiscal year. CSU actually changed their fiscal year last year. And I think it's so important that we leave this option open in the event that something does come up in the future, like whether it be financial changes or, again, we just didn't meet quorum and we need something to be retroactive. When you are elected to the board, you have the opportunity to attend what is essentially a massive 3-day training session called Loon Lake. Your official start date of office is usually June 1st, and Loon Lake takes place around, I want to say the 4th or the 6th, like first week usually. Yeah, usually the first week. We have to acknowledge that at CapU, we have a massive international student population, and a lot of these people plan their trips home months in advance. For these people, like, there's a time difference. There's no doubt about that. There might be a 12, 14-hour time difference, and they might not be able to make these meetings for the literal sake of they don't want to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and show up for a meeting on a Friday. I think it's unfair to a lot of people, and it creates a lot of boundaries. That being said, September 1st hits. We know everyone is in school. We know everyone is available to work on I would say, PST time zone. So those are kind of my two reasonings for voting against this motion. Yeah, thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you. Priya.
So as a board member, I will say that the rules to me were pretty clear. You know, showing up in person or being online with your camera on, I feel like that's pretty bare minimum. And I will say that currently in our board meetings, we do have a lot of members that just have their camera off. I'm like, I don't know what you're doing. I don't know where you are. They're not voting. What I'd like to ask Chris is, given the nature of sort of item A and B, is there a way that we can separate them into two different?
I can take this. You can move to divide the question, meaning to separate the two clauses into separate motions. That would be in order.
Can I do that?
You can move to.
Because these.
One moment, please.
Because both of these clauses can logically stand on their own, working together, a single member in the end for their divided, because there's no event they require to do it right. And so if she requests it, we will automatically have a discussion just on A, and then that's an exception is made just on B.
So just getting some Robert's rules advice. So not only is the motion so you're calling to divide the question, right? So not only is that motion in order, but because it's actually not a motion, it just Robert's rules says that one member can request the question to be divided, meaning the motion to be divided into A and B. And now so the motion has been divided. So now A and B are each their own separate motion, and right now we are now going to be discussing Clause A, which is, be it resolved that the members rescind the decision of the Board of Directors to delay the implementation of in-person and camera-on attendance requirements in the board meetings policy BD 10 from May 31st, 2024 to September 1st, 2024. So B is a completely different motion now. We're just talking about what I just read out, which is A.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Livia.
Hello again. About A specifically. So there was, Sophia, I think, made a good point, or a reasonable point about international students having a bit of trouble during the summer attending meetings. Now, I understand that. I am an international student myself. I go home in the summer. And I have a job at the Courier that means that during the summer, I'm working on like a different time schedule. But because I took that job and I interviewed for that job and I signed a contract that says this job starts at this date, I thought, it's my responsibility to make sure that even though I'm in a different place, because I, get the advantage of working from a different continent, it'll be my responsibility to attend these meetings even when it's inconvenient and tiring, right? Even when it's late at night. I attended a couple at 3 a.m. It's difficult. It's not something that's nice, but it's also like I'm getting paid for it, and I knew that when I went into the job. So I don't think it's an unreasonable expectation of being like, okay, like you've been hired, now you have to attend meetings, even if you're home, I don't think this is reasonable at all, and I think it keeps the board of directors accountable. It's important that people are actually interested and active and aware of what's happening and like are not making decisions like off of what they have heard and like are not fully paying attention, because this is people's tuition money, right? And an international student who pays so much to attend here and know how important it is. So, yeah, do I get to only speak on A or should I speak on B?
You only get to speak on A right now,
awesome.
because
Then
now
I'm done.
that's B is a different motion. Anyone else want to speak on just A? Go ahead, Arpan.
Yeah, just speaking of the contract that we signed before, getting out the position, just a thing.
Excuse me, guys, sorry. We're going to keep our undivided attention on the speaker to be respectful. Thank you very much.
It also, says on the contracts about our pay, and if you can change that, at the last board meeting, there was some of the members had hiked up their wages by 2.5 multiplier, it also says on the contract about that. Why don't you talk about that, else talking about that thing? And the other thing is the executive that he's talking about his personal reason. He went back to India in May, starting of May. So he had no reason of attending that in June, right? So the Loon Lake conference happened in June and he came back in July. So how can he attend that when he is back home? And the other thing is that if you can make changes upon the thing, because when you sign up for your position, there's all things listed. Maybe it would be listed they gotta attend this much in person and that much their camera should be on at the 60% of the time. It also says about your pay, and if you can change that, why can't you make an exception to that? Because according to me, the directors as we are talking about, the work that they did was completely upon the top. They never missed up their duties and nothing about that. And it's not even like they didn't even attended the meetings. They were attended. They just know, some of them don't know about the cameras rule. That's it. Thank you.
Any more discussion on this motion, which is motion A? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Teresa Delabor-Sodier, and I appreciate the board member that came up and gave his explanation for not having the camera on. Some background information is really helpful for the voting members to know what is the reason for this motion being brought to the floor. And it also helps the student union make the decision instead of board members that we may not be privy to the information on. So that will present an opportunity for us as a group to show some empathy or understanding where the rules may be very straight and dry. Cameras must be on, this must happen. If you don't, you're terminated. So I think it's great that you brought this motion forward, and I'm looking forward to voting on it.
Just to be clear, I didn't bring the motion forward. Any more discussion on this motion, motion A? Arpan, is this your second time speaking? Second for this one. Go ahead.
Yeah, just a thing while asking for a vote for again, in favor and against, just to, you can present the consequence, because some people are not able to get it. Like what will happen if they vote against it or in favor of it? Just to have a little explanation about that. Thank you.
So, staff had prepared a report at the end of the summer term. The board's policy requires staff to compile attendance records for directors at the end of each semester. And at that point, we apply the board's attendance rules for in-person attendance and camera on requirements. For any directors who haven't met either of those requirements, either for the number of meetings that they are expected to attend in person, which is 35% or 3 out of 8 in a typical semester in person, or for those online meetings, attending with the camera turned on at least 60% of the time. For directors who haven't met either of those requirements, staff are required to change their attendance for those meetings, whether they were actually in attendance or not. We're required to convert those attendance records to unexcused absences. The policy implications of those unexcused absences are that once a member of the executive team has 4 or more missed meetings, there are compensation implications. So for 4 or more missed mandatory meetings between committee and board meetings, compensation is reduced by 1/3. For 7 or more missed mandatory meetings, compensation is reduced by 2/3. And for 9 or more unexcused absences, an executive's compensation is reduced to 0 for the remainder of the term unless reversed by the board. The additional implication is that for any member of the board of directors who has 3 unexcused absences consecutively or 6 unexcused absences cumulatively total during the elected year, that director is eligible for removal by a 2/3 vote of the board of directors. That's a power that members have granted in the bylaws. The board usually isn't allowed to remove themselves. Where the members have made an exception is on those very objective, do you have unexcused absences or not? And if there are 6 total or more, then those directors are eligible for removal.
Thank you. Any more discussion on this motion? I'll go one more time. Any more discussion on motion A? Go ahead.
It's still a bit unclear for members as to what will be the final implication. It's all very vague because it hasn't discussed a specific member. And I think knowing whether we vote in favor of this motion will in fact terminate a board or just void their salary, it's very important for us to know.
Before that, again, we're gonna not speak in terms of specific individual directors. We're going to keep the conversation about the policy itself, because this policy will also, if this policy is passed, unless the membership rescinds it or alters it, that will apply to future boards as well. So let's not, again, keep the policy discussion about the policy. Were you about to give some context, or?
Sure. So these are public-facing records in that a member could, if they felt particularly inclined, they could read through all of the minutes that are posted of past meetings. And ICM, I think, already stated, the Vice President Student Affairs already stated that the two directors who would be most significantly impacted would be the Vice President Student Affairs and the Vice President Equity and Sustainability, because as members of the executive team, the adoption of this motion would result in both of those executives having crossed the threshold for 4 missed mandatory meetings, which would result in a 1/3 pay deduction. Staff have not compiled attendance records yet for the fall term, so I don't know if any subsequent, or I can't report anyway, whether any subsequent changes further to that would occur. And then 6 directors altogether, those being the Vice President Equity and Sustainability, the Vice President Student Affairs, as well as 3 at-large directors and 1 student senator, were 1 unexcused absence away at that point from eligibility for removal from office. And so if those attendance records were changed, it could be the case that 1 or more of those directors might have crossed the 6 meeting threshold at this point, but I can't confirm that without compiling the fall semester's records.
Do you have a point of order, Nico?
Yeah, there's a lot of side conversation and it's extremely distracting and a bit disrespectful.
Sorry, excuse me, we're not gonna, please, we're not gonna, excuse me, we're not gonna entertain that. It is within a member's right to request that, as the meeting rules, we're not having side conversations, and we're gonna continue, excuse me, what any member that is having trouble hearing is eligible, including yourself, is eligible to request that side conversations are kept to a minimum. It doesn't matter who it is. And those rules have been stated very clearly since the beginning. So please refrain from side conversations. You're free to have conversations elsewhere, but we're going to keep the side conversations to a minimum to respect people's ability to speak and ability to hear other people speak. Thank you very much. Is there any other discussion on this motion, motion A? I'll go one more time. Is there any more discussion on this? This will be your 3rd time speaking, so you would have to move to suspend the rules to be able to speak a 3rd time. Is that what you wish to do? Yes. All right, the member has moved to suspend the rules so that she would be eligible to speak a 3rd time. Simple majority? 2/3 vote. This is a 2/3 majority to allow the member to speak a 3rd time. All those in favor of allowing the member to speak a 3rd time, please raise your voting card and keep them held high. Thank you very much. All those opposed, please raise your voting placard and keep them held high. The motion fails. Is there any more discussion on this motion, motion A? Go ahead, please.
Hi, everyone. So being an executive, I just want to clarify everyone that talking about the execs for Akam has already given his reasons, and talking about Dalkaran, he has attended all his meetings. It was just that he didn't turn his...
Again, within my discretion as chair, I'm gonna ask that we talk about just the policy, not individual directors. The meetings like this are to decide policies that will affect whoever is on a board of directors or whoever is part of the membership. When policies start to become about certain individual people, then people lose sight of what the policy is supposed to be about. So please talk about the principles of the policy and whether you're for or against them or want to clarify something. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so to, in general, clarify this, that I am against this motion because I have voted in favor of this, to this opposition motion in the board. So I would suggest everyone that just vote against this motion because there are emergencies. Everyone has their own life, so let's just keep exceptions for a few of the board members. And for B, I would say that I am in favor of this motion, but for A, I'm against this. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, we're gonna keep discussion on motion A. Any more discussion on motion A? One more time. Any more discussion on motion A? Hearing and seeing none, we will go to a vote. I'll read the motion one more time, and before I ask you to rate for and against. So the motion that we're considering is just point A. So be it resolved that the members rescind the decision of the Board of Directors to delay the implementation of in-person and camera-on attendance requirements in the board meetings policy BD10 from May 31st, 2024 to September 1st, 2024. All those in favor, please raise your placards and keep them held high so we can count. Thank you very much. All those opposed, please raise your placards and keep them held high. The motion is defeated. We're going to consider the separate motion, motion B. Be it resolved that the members prohibit the Board of Directors in the future from making retroactive changes to the implementation date of a policy. Is there any discussion for this motion? Context from staff?
No, it's up to Laura whether she wants to present again, otherwise.
Okay. Laura was the proponent of this, Laura Morales Padilla, who had to leave. Are you speaking in as like for the proponent, or is that allowed?
Well, okay. Well,
Or you can speak as a member anyways. So if you'd
I
like
think
to
I'm
speak.
gonna speak as I didn't.
That's
Laura's
okay.
my friend, but also I haven't received specific information.
Go ahead.
So
Go ahead.
we haven't discussed this together, so no. But I just wanted to reiterate really quickly that this is just a motion to be like, okay, when a rule is instituted, when a policy is instituted, which means everybody agreed it was a good policy, is instituted that one day, and then just that doesn't change unless the rule is repealed, right? So it's just, there's no gray area that allows members to kind of be murky about the rules. It's just I would say it's just to make things more efficient and surer, which I think everybody can agree is a useful thing to do. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any more discussion on the motion on the floor, which is motion B? Go ahead, please.
So one of the things I feel might be add clarity is there currently a notice sent to the executive member when they are at the point of reduction in income or have potentially removal due to attendance issues?
I think that is, I think that's more talking about the last motion that we were discussing. We're now discussing this separate motion, which is about prohibiting the Board of Directors from making retroactive changes to the implementation date of a policy.
Well, given that a warning would be the reason why they would do this, that's why I'm asking for clarification, because to know whether or not the board should be able to make retroactive changes to account for giving the candidate a warning period.
So your question is there a warning given to board
Yes.
members who have missed meetings or at a threshold?
Correct.
Sure. So first, whenever the board is proposing to amend any of its policies, a 2-week notice period is required to the full board of directors before a policy change is considered. In the specific case of removal from office or potential compensation implications as a result of non-attendance, I think as specific examples. For removal from office, the board cannot vote on a 2/3 resolution to remove one of its members unless that director is given 2 weeks' notice and an opportunity to address the board before they make a decision. In terms of compensation reductions, we are required to give 2 weeks' notice to that executive that their pay is about to be reduced as a result of attendance, and then subsequent to that 2-week period, whatever new pay period begins on the next possible brand new pay period, completely clean from the 2-week notice period, that's the first pay period in which the pay reduction would take place. And because is a little insider, but because the first direct deposit for an implicated student executive wouldn't take place until 6 days after the end of that pay period, in practice, you're probably looking at between, in the very tightest timeline, 3 weeks notice, on the most generous timeline, 5 weeks notice.
That's very helpful information. And then second thing that I'd like to explore is that, was this retroactively implemented in order to provide the candidate a grace period?
Again, because the motion has been divided, the A has already been discussed and voted on. We're now discussing B, which is generally about prohibiting boards of directors from retroactively changing implementations of policies in the future.
Yes, I realize that. My question still stands.
What was your question again, please? Can you restate
My
the question?
question was, for item B, whether the Board of Directors decided to retroactively change the implementation date of the policy in order to give the candidate a grace period, or candidates.
I think what I can say from the staff side, and then I think I'll invite elected leadership to offer further thoughts if that's helpful. But in terms of the reporting that went to the president and to the executive team, this summer 2024 was the first academic term in which those attendance requirements had applied. They had been approved by the previous board of directors on May 31st, 2024, the last day of the term, and those requirements then applied to their successors. So this was the first semester where that occurred, when staff identified how many folks were implicated by applying the policy after the end of August. We alerted the president and the executive team to the number of folks who were impacted, and because it felt unusual, the president requested some guidance from staff on what some options were, without the merits of whether staff supported any of those options, but just process-wise, what avenues were available to them. We presented a few. One of those was the option that the board does have the authority to retroactively delay the implementation of a policy. The rationale that was shared, I think I can say publicly at the board meeting when this was discussed, was this idea that given how late in their predecessor's term the policy change had been approved, it was the case, we are aware that a number of directors had made plans for that summer. Now there are avenues in the policy for requesting to be excused in advance or requesting an accommodation from the president if they're not able to participate with the camera on or they're not able to attend in person. The in-person attendance requirement also only applies to directors who are resident in Metro Vancouver. So for those folks who are living in Abbotsford or Chilliwack, for example, the in-person attendance requirement does not apply, but the camera on attendance requirement does. So we provided that information to the executive team in terms of they then made a recommendation to the board, and the board accepted that recommendation.
Thank you for your background information.
Any more discussion on motion B?
Point of information.
State your request for information.
Like what consequences can this bring to the regular practice of the board?
So the question for those who didn't hear is, what consequences could this bring to the regular practices of the board? I can give it to staff for information.
So as worded, this proposal would prohibit the board of directors from retroactively changing the date on which any of its policies become effective, not just with respect to board attendance, but with respect to financial policies or workplace safety and health policies or privacy policies. Any official policy statement of the board would not be subject to implementation date changes.
Sorry, do you have a point of order? Okay, can you please come and use the mic? Just so everyone can hear what's being said. If you could adjust the mic. Thank you very much. Go ahead.
My question is, how often does this happen, that policy dates are retroactively changed?
That's a good question. Give me, like, not The short answer is not often. I'm not immediately finding any examples of that. One example that may come up every couple of years is it's not uncommon. It's sort of a policy change, it's sort of not. It's not uncommon for a collective agreement with unionized staff to be approved after the agreement has actually begun. And if a collective agreement, for example, included changes to the harassment policy of an organization, the board would not have authority to negotiate retroactive changes that might have an impact on policy. That's the only one that's come off the top of my head. The CSU generally attempts to conclude collective bargaining before a new collective agreement takes place. So in the last 6-7 years, that would not have come up. But I can't recall any specific retroactive policy changes other than the one that was being considered under paragraph A.
Okay, so this isn't like a regular problem that people are thinking about a lot.
No, and I will say the board doesn't develop policy in a vacuum. The board generally provides direction to staff on what key concepts or decisions need to be included within a policy, and then staff will typically work on the staff side with support from legal counsel in order to draft the wording of the actual changes.
Okay, thank you.
Any more discussion on this motion, motion B? I'll call once again. Any more discussion on motion B? Seeing and hearing none, we'll go to a vote. Be it resolved that the members prohibit the Board of Directors in the future from making retroactive changes to the implementation date of a policy. This is a 2/3 majority vote. All those in favor, please raise your placards high. Are you meeting to vote in favor or against, you in the orange? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. All those opposed? Thank you very much. The motion is defeated. Item 8 on the agenda is annual report of the Board of Directors. Would any directors like to come speak to this? Or have staff speak to it?
I will just say we do have a written report prepared for membership. So it sets out initiatives of the CSU, including of the student leadership team, over the last 6 months since we last reported to you folks at the semi-annual general meeting in February. If folks have any questions, I have a sneaking suspicion
that we just lost
quorum just walked out the door, acknowledging that we've run over our original time. If folks do have any questions about what you find in the annual report and you're not able to catch one of us this afternoon, you can always send us an email to info@csu.bc.ca. They will make sure your message makes it to the right person. You can also just DM us on Instagram, and we'll get back to you during business hours that way as well. Depending on the nature of your question, we might let you know that we need a few business days to pull together some information or something like that. But we're very happy to give you a hand.
So just a clarification, we have lost quorum, which is the minimum amount of people needed for the meeting to officially take place. So the meeting is dissolved. However, I feel like staff and perhaps board members are going to be around for a few minutes. So if you have questions about the annual report of the Board of Directors or anything in regards to your student union, please come up and feel free to ask them. Thank you for being well behaved and thanks very much.
Thank you for cheering.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for staying here till the very end. Now,
Oh yeah, stay for the draw.
now we have pizza for you folks. And also, we're giving away over $900 in gift cards. And the sheets you have with you, these sheets, this is the number you're assigned. I'll be quickly doing a random number generator. And if your number shows up on the screen, then you get to choose the gift card. And we have gift cards ranging from Best Buy to Sports Check to Chartwell. And the maximum value of a gift card is $50, but you have to stay in the room till the end.
And a gentle reminder before it comes up to folks who are employees or directors of the Students' Union, I'm sorry, you are not eligible for the prizes.
Yes, but you're eligible for pizza.
Yes, correct.